Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to call our council meeting to order here for November the 21st. It's a little after 1 o'clock. And unfortunately, Councillor McCourt will not be here today. She is, maybe she's got a little of what Gary had last week or the last couple of weeks. She's just not feeling well. So we wish Pat all the best. Can I have a motion for confirmation of today's council agenda then, please? Moved by Gary, second by Scott. All in favor? That's carried. Any declaration of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof? There being none, we're going to public hearings under Section 34 of the Planning Act, dealing with zoning bylaw amendments, and it's Section 34 of the Municipal Act, dealing with the road closings. So, Sandra, I guess, well, first of all, we'll motion to adjourn to the public meeting hearing under the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. So, can I have a motion to do that, please? Gary and Scott, all in favor? Carried. And we have zoning bylaw amendment 1017 dealing with the Turner changes. Sandra, do you want to give the report on that one, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. But if it please Council, I will go through the procedures for a public meeting. The Mayor, of course, has announced the application, and myself, the Planning Coordinator, will be giving the planning report, a synopsis of what was on the Township website. The floor will then be open to the public, and the order of speaking is as follows. Those persons in support of the application, those persons in opposition to the application, those persons seeking clarification, and the applicant will have an opportunity at the end to speak further if necessary. Please note that all persons wishing to speak to the application must address their comments and questions to the Mayor, and we advise that before speaking, you must clearly and slowly state your name and address so that the clerk can ensure the record is complete. Members of council may ask questions as they deem necessary. A bylaw may be entertained at a later point during the regular meeting of council or at a later date. Reasons for the decision and impact of public input will be provided by council members. Those persons requesting a copy of the notice of decision must do so in writing to the township, or you may sign the file sheet in the lobby. Please be sure you're signing the correct file sheet to obtain the information required. With respect to application ZBA 1017 for the Turners, the application and notice of public meeting was circulated to the neighboring property owners on or before October 23, 2017, and the signs were posted on the property on October 25, 2017, in accordance with the regulations of the Planning Act. This application is seeking to amend the underlying zone provisions from marginal agricultural and rural residential to special marginal agricultural so as to have one consistent set of zone provisions following the merging of two separately conveyable lots. The Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Zone and permitted uses are not being amended. Just a little bit of background. The Turners came in for a building permit for their house, and while we were looking at the property, it came to light that they actually had purchased two separately conveyable pieces of property and merged them in title, not knowing that there was two different zones on them. So we're just trying to clear up any future confusion that may happen. It did take me a while to figure out exactly what did happen, so there was some confusion. This is just for clarity and ease in maintaining the bylaw in the future. The provincial policy statement and township official plan would be in support of these applications. The land enjoys Oak Ridges Marine zoning, and that is not being changed. The underlying zone provisions are being amended to be consistent throughout the land, recognizing the size of the property at 16 acres and the broken frontages of 169 feet and 310 feet. So a special marginal agricultural provision is being submitted with respect to the minimum lot frontage, because 196 feet is required and they have 169. There are no objections to this application from the Building Department, the Conservation Authority, or Northumberland County. Just in conclusion, the application appears to meet the intent of the provincial policy statement, township official plan, and the zoning bylaw. And a bylaw has been prepared for council's consideration. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Those in support of the application, is anyone here in support? Anyone opposed? Seeking clarification? Anyone? No? Council members, any questions? None. Scott, yes?
Question to staff. Was this application staff-driven, or was it property owner-driven, to clarify this?
This was staff-driven. When I found out that there was 2 zones on the property, I thought this is something that we should be clearing up the same way we would clear up a lot addition from a consent application. We make sure that the existing parcel and the added parcel are of the same zone, so I wanted to treat this property in the same light to be consistent with everything else that we do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have zoning bylaw amendment 1217, dealing with Woodwards, and it's Roger and Teresa. And do you want to give the report on this one, please, Sandra?
Thank you, Your Worship. This application was circulated to the property owners on or before October 23, 2017, and the signs were posted on the property on October 25, 2017, in accordance with the Planning Act. In fulfillment of condition of provisional consent granted under applications B21 and 2217 to sever for lot creation of 2 separately conveyable lots, this application is seeking to zone the 2 severed parcels as rural residential. The proposal is in keeping with the provincial policy statement and the township official plan. This was all thoroughly reviewed at time of consent with the Committee of Adjustment. The parent lands are zoned marginal agricultural, which require a minimum of 5 acres of land and just under 200 feet of road frontage. The retained lands will meet or exceed these minimums, but the severed lands are proposed to be 1 acre with 150 feet of frontage. So the rural residential zone would be appropriate here. The agency comments, there were no objections. Hydro One, Conservation Authority, Township Building, and Northumberland County. So it just seems to be fairly straightforward to bring these 2 lots into conformity with the bylaw. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, call again. Those in support? Anyone opposed? Anyone seeking clarification? There being none, council members, any questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is zoning bylaw amendment 0216, dealing with firewood processing. And Sandra, do you want to give the report on this one, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. The notice of public meeting was circulated to the prescribed commenting agencies and the abutting municipalities as required, and was published in the local print media of Northumberland Today on or before October 26, 2017, in accordance with the regulations of the Planning Act. It was not circulated house by house to adjoining property owners because this is a township-wide amendment, and we cannot mail everybody in the township. That's why this particular application was published in the newspaper, the local print media. The purpose and effect of this proposed amendment, the bylaw will address the addition of the uses of small, medium, and large-scale firewood cutting operations within specific zones. The definition of small, medium, and large-scale operation and other associated definitions will be added to the zoning bylaw, and there will also be addition of general provisions that will help to regulate the uses. A few years ago, there was a site-specific property that council addressed a bylaw for them, for their operation. It was a fairly large operation at the time. Following that, we, the township, received questions about a number of other properties who were having similar but somewhat smaller uses. And so we went out and started looking around, and a subcommittee was struck with council and staff to make sure that we were addressing what's out there and also regulating to some extent what people can do. We want to be sure that property standards are maintained and the noise bylaw for the township is maintained, in addition to various other bylaws that may help to regulate the use. There were a number of comments and concerns raised last December when we had a public meeting, and we tried to take those into account when this draft bylaw was put together for council's review. There is one long existing operation that does not meet the proposed zone parameters, and it's proposed to be recognized as a special property within the township. We are proposing to have a permit or licensing system put in place. It would be a one-time only license, so once you get your license and prove that once you prove that you are complying and then get your license, it would run for perpetuity with the ownership of the property. It's not something we want to keep hounding people on a yearly basis or anything like that. We just want to be sure everybody who is operating is in compliance. If somebody new comes along, then they would have to prove compliance and then receive their one-time permit or license. The provincial policy does encourage efficient development and use of land patterns for the financial well-being of the province and the municipalities. It also encourages diversification of the economic base and employment opportunities. Township official plan permits the uses of home industry and home occupation within agricultural zones. The Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan also permits the uses that way. Firewood processing establishments could be considered an accessory use to the principal use on the subject properties. And maybe a bit of a stretch, but it is similar to a home industry possibility. Home occupations and home industries are permitted in various residential zones, but they have to be entirely within a building. Firewood process is to be used for personal use only in a residential zone, as per the proposed bylaw that's here for further discussion. There were no comments received from the commenting agencies, but there were a few requests for additional information, so I have spoke with a number of people. The use and the definition will assist in the regulation and enforcement and possibilities by staff. Without any regulations, there's not a whole lot that staff can do to assist a neighboring property owner who is having difficulty, or to make sure that the property owner who's operating is operating within any parameters, because we don't have any parameters now. So in conclusion, the proposal appears to be in keeping with the intent of the provincial policy statement, township official plan, and the zoning bylaw, and a bylaw has been prepared for council's consideration. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. I'll call upon those from the public in support. Anyone opposed? Anyone seeking clarification? No? Council members, any questions dealing with the bylaw? Bill?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Sandra for all the work that she put into this. She had to do a lot of research and a lot of background work to come up with what she did. I do have a concern about banning any sale from residential residences. My concern is that we're going to be creating a bylaw that's going to be very difficult for us to enforce. I think it's a fairly common practice for homeowners to bring in maybe half a load of wood or something and cut it, sell a few truckloads to offset their cost, and I think that we will find that we have residents who will continue to do that, and now we're stuck with an enforcement problem that's going to be dumped in Sandra's lap. The burden of proof will be on us. She's going to be spending all kinds of time dealing with complaints from neighbors. So I guess what I'm proposing is I think that this would be much simpler if we took the provision out that sales are outlawed from the residential zones.
Okay. Further questions from council members? Comments? Anyone? I have a couple dealing with, especially with the small scale, and I'm wondering whether we, as much as I hate to do it, I mean, I'm much like you are. I'm not so sure that we can enforce small scale other than with the bylaws such as the noise bylaw, property standards bylaw, that type thing. So I'm not sure that we can. I have a tough time putting it in the bylaw itself, because the small scale is going to deal with allowing a truck with a pup perhaps behind it, even in our urban residential areas, which could be trouble, especially if you're dealing with places such as Deerfield, in around the Ontario Street, where you have a lot of fancy homes that are sure not going to wish to have something like that coming by and dropping a load of trailer load of wood and so forth, next door to them, and we really haven't got anything in this bylaw to say how long it's there for, that type thing. So, I mean, it could bring in rodents, a number of other issues, let alone the sight of it. So I'm kind of where you are, Bill. I think in the same way that if we eliminate the small scale right out of this bylaw, I can support the rest of it, but I just can't seem to get around my head to support the small scale part of it. I think if it's out of here, it'll just fall in and where other bylaws will pick it up. So, but interested to hear what the rest of council has to say. Gary and then Bill?
Yeah, I'm kind of in favor of keeping it the way it is, which is the fact that, I know it's a tough issue whether somebody sells it or has it there, but if we don't put some sort of controls on there for a small person, how do we, I think a fair limit is one load, which is 15 full cords of wood, for somebody to do. If they want to sell some to their neighbor, I'm not opposed to that, but I certainly, I think there has to be some sort of regulation on what is a small size. But I don't want to see somebody turn it into, like 4 loads a year.
If they had 4 loads, it would come into the medium scale, so it would be below.
Well, okay. Well, then I'll say 2 to 3 loads. Like
Sure.
like it's. I think we need, if we take small loads out completely, we have no control over that.
Okay. The other thing is, we have to be very cautious is how we enforce it, and that's very difficult by going by the amount of loads coming in, because unless our bylaw enforcement officer is there when the loads come in, how does he know? It could be, and how does he judge how big the load is? Is it, if we put down the size of loads, 15 cords, he may be able to add them up if he gets there for the first load, but if somebody calls in and says, well, my neighbor's got their second load in, how does he know the first load came in, let alone how big it was and how many cords were on it? So it just becomes, to me, it becomes a very, very difficult one to enforce. But
Yeah. I can see that because, to a point, we're saying 15 a year. Somebody may have half a load left from last year.
Yeah.
So it needs some clarification. Are we going to allow another half next year or just a full load next year? And then, you start accumulating.
Yep. Bill?
So one of our major issues at the beginning, when we started looking into this, was that we wanted to be able to bring the vast majority of our ratepayers into compliance so that they're not breaking any laws. And if I don't see how we can leave what we're calling small-scale operations. I don't see how we can leave it out, because if we do, then everyone who brings wood in at that level is outside the bylaw. Or no? Yes. That's the way I see it. So I think we have to include a definition of small scale. 15 bush cords of wood, for anybody who's ever had a splitting axe in their hand, is a lot of wood. Even with a chainsaw and a wood splitter, I think most residential homes are going to be very happy to be able to put away that much wood in a season. I don't see them. I see a bigger problem us trying to enforce that they can sell it than I do them exceeding 15 cords of wood.
Okay. Being realistic, I don't even know how we would determine whom is selling it, let alone when they're selling it, because, again, unless they put a wood for sale sign in front of the yard, a lot of it's done privately anyway, and to try and enforce that is almost, as you've mentioned, almost impossible. But it comes down to, should we allow a triaxle with a pup to go into some of these urban residential centers? And I have a real tough time with that one. I just know for myself, I just couldn't see us putting that in as a, if that was taken out of this bylaw, perhaps I would look at it more favorably, but with that in there, why would I allow a triaxle plus a pup to come in and drop a load of wood? Unless there's been a number of complaints, Sandra?
Thank you, Your Worship. Since authoring the draft bylaw, I've given more thought got nothing else to do about it. I certainly am not expecting a 100% decision on this today, given the conversations I've had and my thoughts about it. I can go back and redraft this and put some more regulations into the small scale. It was brought to my attention that there's a great number of urban residential or even rural residential zone properties that do not meet the minimum 1 acre requirement. Some of them are 0.11 acres. That's a tenth of what it's supposed to be. So perhaps, given direction from council, the way medium and large scale operations are defined via land size, small can also be limited to 1 acre plus. So if you happen to have a half an acre, you're not able to run the operation, be it with or without sales. That's another step in the process. But just, there's more regulations that we can put into this if this is what council wishes to do. Would you like to see that small operations are handheld equipment only? And again, I'm now out of my realm on that. I do not chop wood, so I'm going to have to ask others for their expertise on that. Is that even plausible? It has to be in the rear yard so that we don't have front yard property standards issues, and it has to be maybe stacked inside of a building, and the building has to meet setbacks. Or if it's not in a building, it still has to meet setbacks as if the court itself was a building. There's a number of different things that can be further discussed at the subcommittee level and then bring back to council. But I'm really liking the conversation I'm getting now. It's giving me more direction, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, Sandra. Well, we do have a staff member who is willing to take this back and have another look at it, and perhaps we could look at it with both subcommittee and then up through coordinator committees and so forth from there. Is that something council would entertain? Yes? Scott? Yeah?
I should certainly entertain that, but because
can't
we're
do-
limited in council members over here, we haven't been getting noticed in the last minute or two. But I do have a comment that I'd like to share before I agree with you, if that's all right. Thank you. I think we have to keep in mind that when we started this process, we were looking at the sale component of the firewood. I question whether any of us truly want to regulate a family getting their own firewood into their own property, into their own house for their own use. I mean, if that's where we're looking, then I have a whole lot of comments that I need to prepare for the next version of this. I think we should concentrate on the fact that this is for sale of wood, and that we are not wanting to regulate private personal use regardless of the size of the property, regardless of what yard it's in. It seems like that's so close to like regulating when we can cut grass and not cut grass for me that I get all excited about that and don't want to be there. So I want to emphasize we're looking at the sales of this. In one of the drafts, we had one load of wood being 15 cord coming in with a maximum sales of 50% of that wood. That seemed reasonable to the subcommittee. If that's not the way we're going to go, then I think we still have to allow the pup, the triaxle, bringing wood in for personal use on private property, and let the other medium and large scale units fall, possibly to where they are right now in the bylaw. Answering your question, Mr. Mayor, yes, I'd be willing to support the idea of going back to subcommittee and then up through the process again.
Okay, everyone else is good with that? Everybody's had their comments, and we can do that. We're not going to put a motion on right now because we're still in the public portion of the meeting, but we will deal with it when we bring it forward and when we're dealing with bylaws. Next up, we have from the Clerk's Department, 2017-15, dealing with road closures, and the first one is Ewart. And who's giving the report, Sandra or Kate? Kate?
Okay, so So we've had requests for closure of road allowances in two areas of the municipality. This is the east-west concession allowance between concessions 4 and 5, Lot 1 in Hamilton Township. We brought this request forward to council previously to review the request, and council passed a resolution to declare it surplus to its needs in the future. And so we're just following through with the process for the closure, holding the public meeting. I notified the adjacent property owners and asked them to submit back to me whether they had an expression of interest in a portion of the road allowance or whether they declined the interest. And I received those appropriate paperwork back, and the only persons that are interested is the applicants, Gordon Ewart and Yana Ewart. And so they have submitted the required applications. We are just waiting on the deposit and reference plan so we can have that to bring forward a bylaw in December for the closing bylaw that will have to be registered on title to the property to affect the closing. So just letting you know, this is where we are in the process. We still have to post a notice on the newspaper. Our policy requires that we do that for 2 weeks prior to the public meeting, as well as a notice being posted on the subject lands. Again, that's required as part of the policy. The notice has been closed on our municipal website and in the lobby as well. So that's where we are at with this one.
Okay, thank you, Kate. I'll now ask for anyone in the support of this road closing. Anyone? Those opposed? Anyone here seeking clarification? No? Council members, any questions? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Again, from the Clerk's Department, dealing with the Essert, and that's the road closing again. So I'll call upon you, Kate, to deal with that one.
Okay, and this is for a road allowance that is between lots 8 and 9, and it lies north-south between the Harwood Road and Turk Road. And so the letter of request was received. Again, it was brought forward as a report from Public Works, and council declared that portion of the road allowance surplus to its needs. And again, I mailed out a form to all the adjacent property owners to submit whether they had an expression of interest or whether they declined. I've received 2 expressions of interest from abutting property owners, from Donald McCauley at 3861 Harwood Road and Brian Turk and Melanie Terran at 9285 Turk Road, and a decline of interest from Dorinda Turk. So the next steps with this particular request will be that staff will convene a meeting with the interested parties to develop a plan of division of the road allowance. A reference plan will be prepared to show the applicable parts on the plan, and that it's done in a way that they can be registered for emergent purposes. So we'll get that draft, and then we will again follow the process in the policy to advertise and bring it back to council.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Those in support of this road closing? Those opposed? Okay, would you like to give your name and address, please?
Justin Essert, 3991 Harwood Road.
Okay. And would you like to comment on your reasons for being opposed?
Oh, I'm for it, sorry.
He's for it.
You're for it. I asked for those opposed. I heard your name and I go, wow. Anyone else that's opposed? Seeking clarification, anyone? Okay, there being none. Council members, anything? No? Okay, so that's it for our public meeting. So can I have a motion to adjourn our public meeting and reconvene to a regular session of council? Bill and Scott, all in favor? And it's carried. Bylaws, planning bylaws. We have bylaw 2017-50 dealing with the zoning bylaw amendment 1017, which is the Turner, dealing with the Turner properties. Can I have a motion that bylaw place certain lands within Part Lot 15 and Concession 6 into special marginal agricultural zone to permit the consistency and zoning provisions of the merged parcels of land, and that they be given first, second, third reading and finally passed here the 21st day of November 2017. Mover Gary, seconder Scott, all in favor. That one's carried. And then we're dealing with zoning bylaw amendment 1217, the Woodward property. Can I have a motion that this being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2001-58 as amended to place certain lands within part lot 23, concession 4, into rural residential zone to fulfill the conditions of severance under files B21 and 22-17, and that be given first, second, and third reading, and finally passed here again the 21st of November 2017. Scott, seconder Bill, all in favor? That's carried. And the wood processing operations, can I have a motion that this go back to staff again? And it's dealing just with the small portion of it. I think everybody's happy with the medium and large portion of it, so that they go back and further investigate and see whether we can tighten up some of the wordings and so forth and bring it back one more time. And poor old Sandra will be happy to get it done, I'm sure. Poor young Sandra, she's saying.
Sorry, Greg.
Well, I meant old because you had to deal with this for so long, right? It's taken years. Mover to do that, Scott. Seconder Gary. All in favor? And that's carried. We're getting there, though, Sandra. We're getting there. Oh, thank you. And next up, we have adoption of previous council meetings and committee of the whole meetings. We have the regular session of council, which is October the 17th. Mover that be adopted, please. Gary and Bill, all in favor? That's carried. And then we have the special budget meeting, which is held November the 9th. Can I have a mover that be adopted, please? Bill, seconder Scott. Yep. All in favor? And I just wanted to, before I went all in favor, I should just ask one thing on this, and it's my fault. But we have a December the 7th meeting coming forward dealing with budget. I believe it's scheduled for 10 a.m. I was hoping we could move that to 1:30. Unfortunately, I have a health unit meeting that takes that morning up, and it's they have a special meeting dealing with the awards of staff and so forth that day. And since I chair that meeting, I was hoping we could move it to 1:30, and we'll deal with it. We've dealt a lot with the budget now, so it'll be just tidying up what few items that we have left. Is it okay we do that? Is everybody in agreement? Yep,
Fine with me.
good.
I'm just not sure about the statement. We have a few things to tidy up, but yes,
Well, we did a lot of motions on the budget, so we'll be bringing back what's left over and so forth, and we've had the presentation, so it won't be quite as in-depth the second time around as it was the first, but I'm sure it'll be just as interesting, though. So, okay, so all in favor, then, we go forward with that, and that's carried. Thank you. And we'll let Pat know, and you'll post it, Kate, and so forth. Yep. Okay, next up we have minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting that was held November the 14th. Can I have a motion that be received for information purposes? Scott and Bill, all in favor? All in favor, and that's carried. Gary wasn't here, sorry, Gary. Committee reports, we have the minutes of the GRCA meeting, and that was held October the 19th. Mover that would be received for information purposes. Gary, seconder Scott, all in favor? That's carried. Now we're dealing with Public Works and Infrastructure, water connection fee dealing with Kennedy Road. And Paul, did you want to speak on this first? Do you want us just to go ahead and it's dealing with the amount and so forth? But
Yeah. Mr. Worship, if please, I could
do you want to go through the report a bit?
give a very
Sure.
a background. Kennedy Road is everyone's well aware than the project. As everyone's, Your Worship, as everyone's aware, Kennedy Road's been a project that's been on the slate for quite a while. So since we've had design drawings in place since 2012, which have included the water main extension, because the Camborne drinking water system right now does have a capacity for additional users. So this presented an opportunity to provide that service to more people, and so for that reason, that component was included in the construction, the water main going from basically the creek up to the end of the curb and gutter, which is the area where it's most of the houses exist. So the total cost, now that we have everything in, the total cost came to $281,300.39 with and inclusion of the non-refundable HST brings it to $251.27, and 35 water services were installed. So that the math brings the simple connection fee to $8,178.61. Now that is strictly to recoup the cost of installing the water main. Users who want to, when they do decide to install, they are still responsible for the connecting from the service shutoff through their private property back to the house, and the cost for all the plumbing in the house and the water meter. There was an initial information letter sent out to the residents so that they were aware of that, and it will be followed up by once a fee is set with a more conclusive information letter. So with that in mind, there seem to be two obvious options. One is to set a fee that would recover all of the costs dollar for dollar. Another one to recover the costs, yet recognize the value, the decreasing value of that initial fee over time, and it was recommended to use a 2% annual increase in order to reflect that. And that figure actually came up in a previous presentation, that was the consumer price index for next year. So that is the recommendation going that is presented, that we set the connection fee for any property owner wishing to tie into the new main on part of the Camborne drinking water system, the new main on Kennedy Road, at an escalating fee based on $8,178.61, valid for 1 year up to the end of 2018, and then an annual increase of 2%.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul? Gary?
Yeah, Paul, you made reference to the 2% being for the CPI index. You got the 2% from that, and should there be some sort? What if the CPI index? You said it was 2% this year. What if it's an increase or a decrease in the following years? Should we be locking it in 2% or?
Through your worship, I guess that would be a council decision. It just when I was presenting this, just for ease of including a fee that everyone would be quite well aware of ahead of time.
Okay.
It's the 2% seemed reasonable.
Okay, I understand. It's just you confused me when you said the consumer price index. I know that it fluctuates each year, and it automatically, you're saying here that you're going to put it in for each year in January. I wonder if we should just, I guess the confusion to me was the consumer price index. If it's up or down, is it going to be affected by the 2%? And I think just the way it states, I'm comfortable with just leaving it at a 2%, as long as we're not saying that the CPI index is the main reason for it.
No, sorry, Deputy Mayor, if I created some confusion there, that was strictly, I include that because of the fact that that's what it had been designated for 2018, just to show that it's a reasonable amount.
Okay, I'm comfortable.
Okay, any further questions? There being none. Oh, you have a question, Paul?
Not a question, Mr. Mayor, if I could. The average, over the past 15 years, the average CPI index is 15. It does fluctuate up and down, but when you average out over 15 years, the CPI increase is 2%. So barring fluctuations from year to year, we can safely say that it will be approximately 2%.
That's fine. I'm comfortable.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So we have can I have a motion that the report be received and council accepts the recommendation to establish an escalating fee for properties on Kennedy Road to connect to the Camborne drinking water system based on the initial being $8,178.61, and and that will be until December 31st, 2018. And then it will be increased 2% per year, each year, January 1st, and that staff be directed to include this fee in Schedule H under the Public Works and / Water in the fees and charges bylaw.
Yeah, as for recorded vote, it is water.
Okay,
Deals with water.
we can do that. Kate, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so that is item 11.1, and Member Kane, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Jim?
Yay.
Councillor McCord is absent. Deputy Mayor Woods?
Yay.
And Mayor Levchin.
And I'm a yay.
Total votes is carried.
Okay. And I guess we'll deal with that probably in the next one also. So we have Public Works and Infrastructure Report 2017-17, dealing with the Water Operations Manager position. And Paul, do you wish to speak on this one, or?
Please, Your Worship. I guess the history, I gave a quick synopsis here in the report of what had happened over the last couple of years since 2015, when we first looked at the request for proposal for to get costs for the entire municipal water operations done externally. And so the following receipt of those, there was a report to recommend the low bidder, which was Lakefront Utility Services. However, we were asked by council to the water staff was asked to come up with some review that to see if there was any possibility to have an alternative structure wherein the work could be done by staff. So that was investigated, and a report was brought to council in December of 2015, and it did. At that time, the approach was to combine basically two roles that existed previously: the senior role, which was a part of a full-time position, plus the regulatory administrative role, which Carolyn Wilcox had done for several years. Combine that into one position, and operate the water systems as we had done in the past, with the township being the accredited operating authority. So that was accepted by council, and we went forward with a 6-month review of that of that system, and then it was finally adopted as our standard operating practice. So, as I mentioned, Carolyn Wilcox is she was in the position of the water operations manager, but it was a contractual position as opposed to a full-time permanent position. And she has since informed us that it will not be renewing the contract, which comes up at the end of December this year. So moving forward, we have to replace that position, or replace Carolyn in that position. But because of the fact that the administrative role and the senior role being combined into one position has produced some savings. Yet over the past year and year and a half with where it's operating, we're finding that several of the duties are still going outside of that position. So, as mentioned here, the source water protection, the system improvements, and all the activities out on the road that still have fallen to others of Public Works, and it's for the sake of being able to keep this position sustainable in the future, it's recommended that be all be combined under as within the one position. And because of that, it would have to go then from a part-time position, which it is now, to a full-time in order to do everything related to the water, and still ensure that we can maintain the regulatory requirements of our water operations. And so because of that, we are recommending, or at least I'm recommending, that we change this position to that of a full-time water operations manager. And there's although there's additional costs from the having a part-time manager, we're still lower than we were at the previous comparable, which was back in 2015. And because of the fact that it is the water operations, the revenue from that comes from the users. All of this cost, this additional cost, is contained within the water system. Therefore, there is no impact on the tax rate. So that is our recommendation.
Okay, questions? Scott?
Paul, just a very simple bullet point here. What function would the new full-time person be doing that previous staff in a part-time position were not doing? You generalized it. Could you be specific and say what exact functions they'd be doing?
Yes, Your Worship, there's in the report. There's four items that are included there. That one being the source water protection activity. Sorry, that's on the second page under discussion, the second paragraph, about halfway through. So the source water protection activities, any of the system improvement projects, actual on-site inspection and supervision of those activities, and the distribution system repairs when there's water main work to be done. Work to be done on the water main. Again, that's the in the field. That was not being done by the part-time manager. And then the asset management plan I've listed here as another component that was done by others in Public Works.
Okay. Yep.
Just
Gary, yeah?
Could I just add, Paul, just follow up, some of that too is being outsourced to other people? Some of that would be outsourced to other people too, with regards to operation?
Contracted.
Just for clarification, did you say would be? Or?
Yeah, is some of that outsourced now? The applications, it's all done in-house through the works?
That's correct, Deputy. It's all done in-house.
Through the works, okay.
Okay, Bill?
So no rate increase to taxpayers, does that mean a water rate increase? How do we make up the $43,000? Sorry, $34,000.
Yes, Councillor, I could defer to Paul, but it's the projections in our water rate study appeared that we would be able to absorb that. If I could.
Okay, Paul, do you want to add to that?
Through Mayor Lufshin, just to reiterate what Paul said, the financial portion of the water rate study laid out revenues over expenses, and then the portion that's going to reserves after that. In the past couple of years, we've experienced some, savings in operations, and I'm taking a few guesses because a lot of that information was done before I got here. But we've actually done a little bit better in the within the water department. So the current operational portion of it could absorb the extra cost within this without having a negative impact on our contributions to reserves or a negative impact on the ratepayer. So basically, that's a long way of saying at this point, no, it doesn't look like there'll be a rate increase beyond what is already recommended and is part of the fees and charges by law.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Scott, yes?
I'm sorry, I'm not getting it, Paul. Carolyn's position was part-time.
Correct.
And in your list, in the paragraph, which you sent me to, which I had privilege to reading before, I'm maybe not keying into a couple of words here, so my apologies on that. Are there any of those items identified that the new position person would be doing? Are there any of those items that have been contracted out to GRCA or any other agency or any other person?
Through your worship, not the in-house activities. Like if you're referring to the source water protection, yes, we're a partner with Ganaraska on the source water protection, but the township is still responsible to have a member on that on the our region for the source protection plan. We are an active member in that, and that is done by. Actually, I sit on that committee. So that is the source protection. We do that in partnership with Ganaraska, but it's still we are still required to be an active participant in that.
So would there be dollar savings with our new person being available full-time to have more opportunity to work on this rather than yourself or any part-time person? Would there be any cost savings to the water ratepayers?
No, there wouldn't be cost saving to the water ratepayers because that is still the source protection activities all relate to the water plants.
So we're not saving any outside money then with going to this person full-time?
That's correct. We are trying to consolidate all of the work related to water with just the one person.
Okay, so what we're doing is pulling back duties that other staff, yourself included, have been doing into the water department person. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I suppose for clarification, some minor savings could be realized with less time against overall responsible operator going to someone outside of the water operations manager, which happens in the absence of the water operations manager.
Some of those expenses would be weekend calls that possibly our new full-time person would be taking a rotation shift on?
Your Worship, no, not as far as calls per se, but just the any time that Carolyn, as a part-time water operation manager, wasn't available, and then it was there's a overall responsible operator has to be assigned to another employee, and so that wouldn't happen nearly the extent of with someone at full-time that does it part-time.
So there's a little clawback of this potential $43,000 upcharge, but darn little is what I hear you saying. Would I be correct in that thought?
Yes, it's correct. It's definitely not large.
It's not just the money in this circumstance. It's also Paul's job is evolving, and we're trying to give him more money in his department to get work done. And of course, as he has to do more work there, he's still doing some of the waterworks and so forth. So I think he's trying to relieve himself from the waterworks end of it, and just look after the roads end of it so that he can get his job done, because his work is becoming more and more demanding as time goes on, and we have been increasing that budget. Even though it's been slight increases, it has been increased enough that it's added additional work to Paul. So I think that's part of one of the main factors that we're looking at going back to a full-time water manager. It's not a director's type position, it's a manager's position, and some of that would be absorbed with the Carolyn leaving position also. Does that help, Paul, in clarifying? Am I right?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It's basically, in a word, it's the sustainability, just to make sure that the structure is sustainable going forward.
Okay, further questions?
No.
Can I get a motion then that the report be received, that council Township of Hamilton acts the following, that council approve the recommendation to change the classification of the water operations manager position to that of a full-time managerial position. So it's been part-time, well, now, it doesn't say part-time here, but it should be part-time water operations manager to a full-time marginal operation manager. Motion to do that, please. Bill, Gary, all in favor?
Recorded vote, please.
Oh, yes, we do need a recorded vote. Water again. You're right, Gary.
So this is item 11.2. Councillor Kane, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Gibb, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor McCord is absent. Deputy Mayor Woods?
Yay.
And Mayor Lautschen, yea or nay?
Yay.
4 votes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. And next up, we have from Parks and Rec, dealing with the Gore's Landing Wharf design. And Trevor, are you going to come forward at all, or do you wish to speak on this at all, or do you want us just to go forward with the motion that's before us?
Well, I can answer any questions, but yeah, we're
Sure.
just looking at moving forward with the presentation from Committee of the Whole to proceed with the final design drawings and proceed with the tender documents.
Okay. Maybe I could just speak on a little bit of this. I know all of council have had some emails on some misunderstandings dealing with their Committee of the Whole meeting and so forth. I know some of the residents there are very concerned dealing with the vegetation that's there now, especially that's along the lake. Some of it was put in, looked after and planted by some of the area residents. Can we have it, and I know it's not necessarily in this motion, but maybe you can just direct staff, can you have it, if there is any changes whatsoever, or if you plan to do anything with that, can you maybe contact that group that's out there? And I think I forwarded those emails to you.
Yeah, and it was made very clear in the open house meeting that we held out there that they wanted the native plants left, and they've built that into the design. And yeah, the plans are to leave it, but if there is something come up, we can reach out to the people that are concerned.
Sure, because you may have to, I don't know whether you'll have to move any or not when you're redoing some of the design that's out there, because, I mean, you just for the sake of room and so forth, you may have to move some. But if that can happen, that'd be appreciated. So, any other comments or questions dealing with this? Bill?
Well, I was going to bring up the same thing, Mark, and I mean, it's right in the minutes, the shoreline vegetation should be maintained.
Yes.
It's right, I mean, that was,
Yep.
I don't know where the confusion came. The only thing I can
There was
remember at all is they discussed one Manitoba maple tree that was growing into the willow or something, and they want to remove that because it's growing wild.
There's
And
some of the underbrush and whatnot of that one tree
Right.
that was going to be cleared
I
out.
don't know where the,
Unfortunately, someone was here in the audience, and they took misinformation back and to some of the people there, and unfortunately, it escalated, and we got a
Sure.
number of emails. So yes, and they want to keep it the same as it is, as natural as possible. So, but if there's nothing else, I'll put the motion on the floor then that Plan Mac Engineering be authorized to complete the design drawings and contract specifications, and more to proceed with the issuing of a tender documents as outlined on the November 14, 2017 Committee of the Whole presentation. So, mover to go forward with this. Mover, please. Bill, seconder. Scott, all in favor? It's carried. Carried unanimously. So thank you for that. And next up, we have a CAO's report dealing with the off-road vehicle use on municipal roads for snow plowing. And I don't know if you want to speak to this, Arthur. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think we've heard it at the Committee of the Whole meeting. You're here to answer questions. Does anybody have any questions for Arthur? Do you want me to just put the motion on? I'll go forward with the motion then that that the report be received and that council acts the following, that council confirms that it will not proceed with an exemption for ATV snowplows at this time. Mover to do that, please. Gary, seconder Scott, all in favor, carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. You got off easy, you hardly made the chair warm. And Beth, you have a number of policies and procedures that were within our agenda. We'll deal with the first one first, dealing with human resources. Any questions on this one? This is dealing with policies and harassment, discrimination, hiring of relatives, memberships, performance management, position descriptions, probation progressive discipline, recognition, resignation, salary administration. Anyone have any questions or comments on this one? Gary, yes?
You've covered them all. I just hoping it's the right one. I do have a question in regards to page, right near the end of the report, Beth, in section, or page 116. Bring it up here.
So I have a paper copy, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Gary.
What it is the Committee of Councils, okay, it's the Committee of Councils, the resolution there, how we, what they are. I think I'm in the right one, I hope.
Oh, it's going to come up.
Oh, that's the next one?
It's
Okay.
coming up later, am I not right, Kate?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's coming up a
I have
little bit
nothing on
more.
this one, sorry.
Okay.
She was reading through them all, and I wasn't sure.
Can I have a mover that those that I've just read off will be, the revised copies will be, I guess we'll need to approve those. So can I have a mover to do that, please? Scott, seconder. Gary, all in favor on those ones. This is dealing with just human resources. So that's carried. And then we're dealing with policies and procedures dealing with building. And this is, again, dealing with the building department policies and procedures. And basically, we wanted the reports to be received and that council approve the policy and procedure document. And that's just, again, dealing with the building department policy and procedure as presented. Is that where
This is, it's in that section there.
it's under building? Or is it under committees?
Actually, it's
It's under committees, I think. The way it
It's
is.
the very last page, Beth, of the report.
Yes, that would be the third out of four.
Okay, so we're dealing with the building one first, so can I have a mover to go forward with that then? Scott, so we're approving these, seconder Gary, all in favor? That's for the building department, so that one's done. And then we're dealing with the policy and procedure dealing with committees. Can I get a mover on this one, and I'll let Gary speak on it. You'll move Gary, seconder Scott, and then questions, Gary.
Yes. I'm just wondering, the last section, the indemnification, I wonder if we could put a definition of what is indemnification in there, because it says council deems it expedient to provide indemnification for members of local boards and committees. Now, I think the confusion to me is, does this indemnification include a salary? Or are we talking just if they have out-of-pocket expenses? So I'm just wondering if you could clarify what you mean by indemnification?
So I'll look to Kate if I go off track here, but in my mind, that was, that's been in the policy, and it refers to insurance that staff arranges for members of boards and for volunteer committee members.
Okay, I'm just wondering, can we somehow put that, the way I'm reading it here, it doesn't show, unless it's without, I'm only reading what I see in front of me, where it says council deems it expedient to provide indemnification to boards and committee of council. I wonder if we could add something to that for liability purposes or something?
Sure, I can take that back and look for alternative
Wording? Okay, other than that, that's the only question I had on it.
So do we want to bring this policy back then? Is that...
Sure.
Please.
Okay, so we'll bring that one back. So kind of a mover, well, we've had it motioned and seconded, so I'll ask for all in favor, and if we don't get enough hands, then we'll go back and motion to defer this one. So all in favor? No? So can I have a motion to defer the policy and procedure dealing with committees and bring back some further wording dealing with indemnification? Gary, seconder Scott, all in favor? And that's carried. Then we have policies and procedure dealing with their emergency plan. Can I have a mover that the report be received and approved as presented? Mover to do that, please. Gary, seconder Bill. Comments on this one? There being none, all in favor? That was carried. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And we'll see you next month, probably with the other changes.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, next from the Clerk's Department, Bill 68, Modernizing Ontario's Municipal Legislation Act and 2017. Kate, do you want to speak to this at all? Or?
If there's any questions, I'll leave that way. If there's any questions of members of council, it's quite a hearty report that I tried to cover those things that needed to be brought to council's attention And in the report, anything that's in red is letting you know that those are things that we have to work towards, with the procedure bylaw, adding wording, conflict of interest registry, procedure bylaw because there's a new definition of meeting. So again, if there's any questions.
Anyone with any questions on this? Bill? Yeah?
Just for my clarification, then, this is about a 2-year phase-in, then, is that what we're looking at? Okay.
Yes, some of the requirements are to be in place by January 1st, 2018, others not until January 1st, 2019.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? There being none, can I have a mover that the report be received for information purposes outlining the changes as presented in Bill 68, and that's modernizing the Ontario's Municipal Legislative Act in 2017, and that Council directs staff to prepare reports for presentation to Council to enact specific changes to policy and applicable bylaws for adoption by Council as a result of these amendments of Bill 68. So mover to do that. Gary and Bill, all in favor, and that's carried. And we have the restricted acts of Council, our lame duck period. And Kate, do you want to speak on this one?
So I felt this was important to bring this to Council's attention at this time. So 2018 is our election year. There have been some changes in the Municipal Elections Act. The time frame has been shortened, and nomination date is now July the 27th, and then the election is on October 22nd. So there's 2 time frames where the clerk will calculate whether the municipal council of the day is in a lame duck position. And then if council is declared to be lame duck, then we need to have a bylaw put forward to delegate certain authorities to the CAO during that time frame. And that would be financial signing authority for expenditures outside the current budget exceeding $50,000 and or for the disposition of any real or personal property of the municipality which has a value exceeding $50,000 at the time of disposal, and be the authority to hire or remove any officer from or to employment the Township of Hamilton. So the 2 periods of time are between July 27th and October 22nd. So when the nomination papers come in, they need to be certified, and at that time then I would advise council whether we're in a lame duck position or not. And then because it requires that the formula is that it requires if there's less than 3/4 of the existing members are not running for township council, the restrictions in the act will apply. So in a 5-member council, 4 must file nominations and be certified. And then the second period of time is between post-election, between October 22nd and November 30th. Again, after the election results are declared, there's still that formula of the 75% of the incumbent councillors returning to council. Then if there's less than that, then the restrictions in the act will apply. So there's other areas of the Elections Act that have changed as well, and there'll be a report coming forward on those specific changes that we have to adhere to and write in our policies and procedures.
Okay, any questions for Kate? Okay, we have a motion here that we receive the report for information purposes, and that council receives a report from the Clerk's Department 2017-14 regarding restricted acts of council in the lame duck periods, that you receive that for information, and that the clerk be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw prior to the nomination date, which will be July 27, 2018, delegating authority to the Chief Administrative Officer, or the CAO, and that will be from July 27th up to December 4th, 2018. And then it also be the financial signing authority for expenditures outside the current budget, which exceed $50,000, and or the disposition of any real or personal property of the municipality in the value exceeding $50,000 at the time of disposal, and that be the authority to hire or remove officer from or to employment with Township of Hamilton. Mover to do all this, please, and it'll all go to Arthur's shoulders. Mover to do it, Gary, seconder. Scott, all in favor? And it's carried.
You want a recorded vote on that, Arthur?
Arthur's going on holidays about that time. I'll go to Paul or Kate or whoever. Emergency services, we have no reports. Communication and announcements, there is a number of them there. Can I have a mover that we receive the communication announcements for information purposes, and then we'll pull out any if you so wish. Gary? You'll move, seconder Scott, and then we'll call out. Which one would you like to pull out, Gary?
15.4, Hamilton it's getting upon that time very quickly. Giving Tuesday, proclamation from the...
Oh, yes, Kate does have that one pulled out. It is, you'll move that the request from... No, that's not it.
That's the United Way.
United Way,
Must be on the other page. It's on the other page. Okay. You'll move that the request from the Assembly of the United Way for a proclamation to recognize Tuesday, November the 28th, which is next Tuesday, as Giving Tuesday in Hamilton Township. So you'll make that a motion, seconder, to do that. Scott, to get our pocketbooks out that day. All in favor? That's carried. And then next up, anyone else want something pulled? Gary again?
Yeah, I do West Northumberland physician recruitment.
Oh, yes.
I think we've already forwarded that to budget purposes, so...
Want to approve it?
I'll approve it.
Gary will move, seconder.
I will.
Bill, all in favor? Carried, and the same amount it's been for about 3 or 4 or 5 years, maybe. And next up, I guess for Coburg Rotary, they're looking for some ice time donations, so not sure which one that falls under. Which one is it, Kate?
15.3.
Oh, up here, 15.3.
That was just suggested.
Yes, it's been suggested that we give them a dollar amount or a donation of ice time. So I know we've done donations of ice time in the past, but if anyone would like to put that on the floor, Gary, you'll make a motion
Give them an hour's ice time.
at both Bewley and Baltimore, or just one?
I'll make it both. I think we've
Okay.
given both in the past.
Sure. Bill, you'll second. All in favor? That's carried. Anything else from this? Anybody else want anything pulled? Bill, yes?
Yeah, there are several municipalities asking the government for an impact study on Bill 148. I'm not sure if we've already supported this or not, but if we haven't, I really believe we need to, concerning how it's going to affect wages in the municipal sector, and particularly how it's going to affect volunteer firefighting. It's just going to put them right out of business. So I think that they need to take a really serious second look at Bill 148, and I think there's many municipalities that support it. That review, the better. So I think we need to jump in on that one.
Okay, you'll move, seconder to do that then? Yeah, it's under 15.8, so we'll deal with it under 15.8. Seconder to do that? Scott, all in favor? And that one's carried unanimously. Anything else from to be pulled? Do you want to update us? I know there's been some updates, but we've got the motion, we dealt with it. We want to do it.
Exactly. Through your worship, just to clarify that we did receive notification from the Minister of Municipal Affairs that the government's intention to introduce changes to Bill 148 in reflecting AMOs and various people have made submission to the government, and it will deal with some of the volunteer firefighter provisions in particular from what we've been told through that letter. We'll be obviously waiting to see what the actual instructions are going to be or what the changes would be. And in the meantime, of course, staff are attending information updates to better understand what the impact of the bill is presently, contributing to submissions that are being prepared. So when we get more information, we'll bring back an update to council so you're fully aware of what the potential is as it evolves and as we know about it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arthur, for the update. Anyone else? We've done all, did I do all in favor? Yep.
Yeah, the mover and the seconder on the communications. We just need
Oh, to receive all the communication, it's been moved and second. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay.
Just
Carried, yeah.
one more, I think it's kind of important, the resolution from Northumberland County in regards to provincial gas tax criteria, where they're sort of requesting that because we don't have public transportation, but also we should be eligible for some of the 4% that's being given, handed out to those municipalities that do have transportation, that it be similar to what the federal, run the same way as the federal gas tax.
Okay, so that one falls under, that's 1511.
Yeah, 1511.
So you want to move that then? You support?
Yes.
Okay, seconder. Scott, all in favor? That one's carried, and we've dealt with the receiving, so we'll move on to media questions. Valerie?
Mr. Mayor, as far as the approach that's supposed to be made to municipalities on non-medical cannabis outlets through the LCBO, have there been any inquiries about putting, say, in our tourism areas, LCBO outlets that will deal with this as well? Has there been any approach?
Not that I'm aware of it. Have staff received any? No? And council, any other councilors received any at this point? Nothing? Nope.
Thank you.
That's it? Well, you were quick and easy today. All right, so we have a closed session. Can I have a motion to adjourn to a closed session to discuss the matters that fall under the following sections of the Municipal Act, 239-2C, and that's the acquisition or proposed or pending acquisition of or disposition of land by a municipality or local board, and we're looking at municipally owned lands. 239-2B, dealing with the matters of an identifiable individual, including a municipal or local board employees, and it's then we're dealing with E, dealing with litigation and potential litigation, and that's before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local boards. And we're also looking at F, and that's to advise if that is subject or solicitor client privilege, including communication necessary for that purposes. And that we're dealing with generally insurance and legal matters. So can I have a mover to go in camera, please? Scott, seconder, Gary, all in favor?
2-minute break.
Yep, we can take till, probably go to 2:25. 4-minute break. Yep. Okay. So from reporting out of council met in closed session to discuss matters regarding acquisition or disposition of land, and it dealt with legal and insurance matters, and there's nothing to report at this time in open session. Notice required by bylaw. We've already talked about budget meeting number 2, so that's December the 7th, and it will be at 1:30 now. And we will go as long as it takes, hopefully, to get that one done. And confirmatory bylaw 2017-52, and it's to, are we asking to rescind this? Is that what you're?
to adopt the proceedings.
I just see this underneath, so that's why I wondered what that was. Okay. So can I have a mover to that bylaw 2017-52, being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the regular council meeting held here today on November 21st, 2017, and to authorize its execution and given it first, second, and third reading and finally passed? Mover? Bill? Gary? All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn, Scott. We are now adjourned at 3:32. Thank you.